You stand in a great hall lit by flickering torches, the air thick with incense and the weight of expectation. You are not a free soul anymore, though you may not realize it fully yet. The path of knighthood is not simply a matter of learning how to swing a sword or ride a horse. It begins, and will always circle back to, the oath that binds you tighter than chains ever could. The words seem simple when you first speak them, kneeling before your lord or your king, but their weight presses down on you far longer than armor ever will. As you kneel, the stone floor feels cold against your knees, and the hall grows quieter. The murmurs of others fade into a silence that seems almost sacred. The sword of your master touches your shoulders, the steel cool against your skin, and you repeat the vow. You promise loyalty, obedience, and service. It is not a small promise. You give away the right to decide your own destiny, because now, every step you take is meant to honor the Lord who raised you. You do not fight when you wish, you do not travel where you wish, and you do not speak as you wish. You are no longer only yourself. You are a vessel of duty. The ceremony feels glorious when you are young. The banners, the colors, the songs of heralds, they make you believe you are stepping into a life of respect and purpose. Yet, behind every word lies a trap. You may think you will spend your days riding into noble battles, slaying dragons of flesh and of story, rescuing maidens, and dining in halls of gold. But the truth is far colder. Your oath does not promise you adventure, it promises you servitude. It locks you into obligations that stretch over decades. You are sworn to protect your lord, but that means putting your life at risk for battles you may not believe in. You swear to protect the weak, but often those weak are ignored, while the powerful use your blade for their quarrels. You swear to uphold honor, yet honor is defined not by you, but by the fickle whims of those who command you. A careless word, a missed duty, or even hesitation in battle may mark you as dishonorable. And dishonor is worse than death. Think of what this oath demands: obedience when you are weary, courage when you are afraid, silence when you long to protest, and violence when you would rather choose peace. You are told that these sacrifices will make you noble. But as you sit by the fire years later, wounds aching and spirit bent, you will realize the nobility mostly shines for others who watch from safe distances. The pledge does not end after the ceremony. It lingers in every corner of your life. If your Lord summons you in the middle of winter, when your body begs for warmth, you must rise, mount your horse, and ride through snow and ice. If he commands you to fight, even when your wounds from the last battle have barely healed, you have no choice but to obey. If he chooses to send you to guard a desolate stretch of land where no soul passes for weeks, you must endure the loneliness. Even in moments of rest, you feel the oath whispering. You cannot marry without your Lord's approval. You cannot spend your wealth as you please, for so much of it is tied to the expenses of duty: armor to repair, horses to feed, weapons to sharpen. You cannot turn your back on a fight, even if every part of you longs to retreat. The oath is a constant shadow, reminding you that you belong to something larger, and that larger thing does not always care if you suffer. And yet, the oath holds power. It binds you to a brotherhood, a shared identity among knights across lands. Wherever you go, others know you are a knight not just by your armor, but by the invisible weight of that vow. It is supposed to give you dignity, a place in the world's great chain. But dignity, like honor, is costly. Many will respect you, yes, but that respect comes with expectations. If you falter, they will turn their backs more quickly than they embraced you. The older knights who watch you during the ceremony know this truth. They do not say it aloud, it is not a tale for a bright young squire's ears. They watch you kneel and smile as you rise, now a knight in name, and they remember their own youth. They remember the same thrill, the same pride. And they also remember the endless years of labor that followed, the betrayals of lords who cared little for their sacrifices, the companions lost in battles that blurred together, the cold nights spent questioning whether the oath was worth it. But none of that is spoken in the hall. Instead, the vows are sealed, and you are raised up. The crowd cheers, the banners sway, and you smile, because you are too young to know that what you gained is not freedom, but a new kind of bondage. You walk out of the hall wearing a title that shines brighter in imagination than in reality. And as the doors close behind you, you carry with you a vow that will never release you, not until your body breaks or your life ends. That is the beginning of being a knight. Not glory, not riches, not freedom, but an oath. A heavy, unrelenting oath that will shape every day that follows. You rise before dawn, when the air is still damp and heavy, and your body aches from the day before. As a knight, you are expected to train endlessly, for a warrior who softens even a little becomes a liability. There is no room for laziness, no patience for weakness. Every morning feels like the beginning of a battle against your own muscles, your own exhaustion, your own doubts. The oath you swore does not just bind your mind, it consumes your body as well. The first sound you hear is not birdsong, but the bark of orders. A master at arms, or perhaps your own lord, commands you to rise. Sleep is brief and broken, and the straw mattress beneath you offers little comfort. Still, you throw yourself into the routine. You begin with the sword, the most basic and the most demanding of your tools. The weight is familiar now, but never light. You swing it again and again, until your arms burn and your hands blister. You strike at wooden posts, at straw dummies, and sometimes against fellow squires or knights in practice bouts. Each clash rattles your bones, reminding you that combat is never graceful, no matter how the bards sing of it. And the sword is only the beginning. After the blade comes the spear, long and unwieldy, meant to keep enemies at bay or to drop through lines of men. Then the mace, heavy enough to crush a helmet, so heavy that your shoulders scream after minutes of practice. Then the bow, not the sleek weapon of a hunter but a war bow, massive and cruel, demanding every ounce of your strength to draw. Every weapon you train with leaves its mark upon your body, bruises and strains that heal too slowly, only to be replaced by new ones. The horse is a weapon too, and it requires just as much discipline. You are not merely a rider, you are expected to be one with the animal, to control it in the chaos of battle, to guide it through mud, blood, and fire. Training means endless hours in the saddle, practicing charges, maneuvers, and sudden stops. The warhorse is no gentle creature, it is a beast bred for power and aggression, and you must bend it to your will. But bending is not simple. Many days end with you thrown to the ground, the breath knocked from your chest, as the horse decides it has had enough of you. You climb back, again and again, because you must. A knight without mastery of his mount is no knight at all. Discipline is drilled into you with cruelty. Mistakes are not tolerated. Drop your sword during practice, and you are punished. Fail to block a strike, and the blow lands harder than necessary, so the pain teaches you. Hesitate in command of your horse, and you are thrown again, this time under the mocking eyes of your peers. Every failure is public, every weakness displayed, because only humiliation and pain seem harsh enough to forge obedience. You learn to grit your teeth, to accept the sting of the whip or the jeer of a comrade, because those are lighter burdens than disgrace. Training is not just about strength. It is about endurance, because battles are long and brutal. You run in armor, though the plates weigh you down and your lungs beg for air. You climb ropes with numb hands, crawl through mud, carry heavy stones as though they were shields. Day after day, your body becomes harder, but it is never enough. The masters always demand more, as though perfection lies just beyond your reach, a horizon you can never touch. The repetition numbs your mind. Sword swing after sword swing, shield block after shield block, lance thrust after lance thrust until the rhythm becomes endless. You feel as though you are less a man and more a machine, built only for violence. And perhaps that is what the lords want. A knight who thinks too much is dangerous. A knight who questions is troublesome. But a knight who trains until thought dissolves into instinct is useful. And yet, even instinct has its price. Your muscles stiffen. Old wounds ache. Bones heal crooked. You are young, but your body feels older with every year. You learn quickly that knighthood does not promise longevity. It promises usefulness. You are trained to be ready for war, but no one tells you that training itself wages war upon your body long before the enemy ever does. At night, when the day's regimen is finally over, you collapse onto your straw bed again. Your arms tremble even at rest, your legs feel like stone, and your back burns. You close your eyes, only to dream of drills and commands, as though the training has followed you into sleep. And before the dream ends, you are woken once more by the call to rise. The cycle repeats, merciless and unbroken. It would be easier if you were allowed to choose. If you could set your own pace, decide which skills mattered most to you, perhaps there would be satisfaction and progress. But knighthood is not about choice. It is about conformity. You do not train for yourself. You train for your lord, for your duty, for the battles others will throw you into. Each hour you spend perfecting your strikes is an hour claimed by someone else's will. So you endure. You swing the sword, you bear the shield, you guide the horse, you suffer the bruises, the cuts, the jeers, the exhaustion. And slowly, painfully, your body bends to the demands placed upon it. You become what they want you to be, a weapon in human form, honed and hardened, stripped of softness. The endless training regimen is not glorious. It is not noble. It is the grindstone that wears you down while shaping you. You imagine the songs that bards might one day sing of your victories, but they will never mention the years of sweat, blood, and broken bones that came before. No one sings about practice. No one sings about exhaustion. Yet without them, the shining image of the knight could never exist. And so you wake each day, and you do it all again. Because that is what the oath demands, and that is what the life of a knight requires. Endless, merciless training, until the line between your will and your duty is erased. You never forget the first time you wear a full suit of armor. It is a moment that every young knight dreams of, the day when metal replaces cloth, and weight replaces freedom. From a distance, armor gleams like a second skin of glory, polished, perfect, unyielding. But when you step into it, when the straps tighten and the buckles click into place, you realize what it truly is, a prison of steel. The squires help you dress, because you cannot manage it alone. There are too many parts, too many straps and clasps, each one carefully fitted to your body. The chainmail comes first, thousands of tiny metal rings, heavy and cold. It hangs around your shoulders like wet sand, pulling you down, pressing against your ribs. Then comes the padding beneath, thick linen and wool meant to keep the metal from cutting into your flesh. It soaks up your sweat almost instantly. Over that, the plates, breastplate, backplate, gauntlets, greaves, sabatons. By the time they finish, you feel as though you've been buried upright. It weighs more than you imagine. 40, 50, sometimes 60 pounds or more, depending on your lord's wealth. At first, you cannot move properly. You try to lift your arms, and the steel drags you back down. You take a step, and your knees protest. Even turning your head is an effort. You feel clumsy, as though your body no longer belongs to you. The air inside the armor grows hot quickly, and your breath fogs against the visor. You are sweating before the battle even begins. And yet, you must train in it. You must learn to run, fight, and ride while wearing the weight of your own protection. The master at arms shouts at you as you stumble. You lift your sword, swing, block, each motion slower than it was in the training yard. Every mistake is punished, not with words, but with exhaustion. You learn that armor is not a gift, it is a challenge. The steel keeps blades from cutting you, but it also drains you long before any enemy does. The stories told by poets never mention the smell. After an hour inside the armor, your body is soaked, and the linen padding beneath turns sour. In summer, the heat becomes unbearable. You can feel the metal burning against your skin, and there is no relief until someone helps you take it off. In winter, it's the opposite. The steel freezes so quickly that your fingers go numb, and the cold seeps deep into your bones. Armor doesn't care for comfort, it only serves its purpose. Even resting is difficult. You cannot sit properly without removing half of it, and removing it takes time you may not have on a battlefield. Many knights have died not from a sword or arrow, but from exhaustion or suffocation inside their own armor. The padding traps the heat, the weight crushes the chest, and the helmet limits your air. You breathe in short, shallow bursts, and your heartbeat drums against the plates. In those moments, the armor feels less like protection and more like a tomb. And yet, you wear it proudly, because pride is expected of you. When you walk through the castle courtyard, the metal clanking with every step, the peasants look up in awe. To them, you are a figure of power shining, invincible. They do not see the sweat dripping down your face, or the way your back strains with every movement. They see a knight, not a man trapped inside steel. You learn quickly how to stand tall despite the pain, how to breathe as though you are comfortable, how to smile beneath the visor. The illusion is as heavy as the armor itself. Your squires polish it every night. They scrape off dried mud and blood, oil the joints so they will not rust, and repair dents where blades have struck. You watch them sometimes, wondering how many more times it will be mended before it fails you. Armor can only protect you for so long. A well-placed arrow through a gap, a hammer blow to the head, a fall from your horse, any of these can turn the protection into a coffin. And still, you keep it close. You feel uneasy without it, vulnerable, exposed. The armor becomes part of you, a burden you depend upon. You learn to move with it as though it were your own flesh. You know every scratch, every dent, every patch repaired. Each mark tells a story, a battle survived, a narrow escape, a mistake that didn't kill you. It is both enemy and companion. At night, when it finally comes off, you feel light but strangely weak, as though the armor carried you instead of the other way around. You touch the bruises it left behind, dark bands across your shoulders, raw spots on your hips and thighs where the edges rubbed too long. Your hands are swollen from gripping the sword through metal gauntlets, your neck stiff from holding your head upright beneath the weight of the helm. You lie down and close your eyes, but even in dreams, you feel the pressure of the plates against your chest. You realize, over time, that the armor does not just shield your body, it changes your mind. You begin to move differently, to think differently. You grow cautious, deliberate, slower. You carry the habit of weight even when unarmed, your posture curved, your movements measured. The steel molds your spirit as much as your muscles. And then comes the day when you must wear it for real battle. The moment before combat, you stand still as your squires fasten the last buckles. The noise around you fades until you hear only your own breath inside the helmet. The world becomes narrow, a slit of vision, a muffled echo of sound. You feel trapped in a private world of metal and heartbeat. The fear that creeps in has nowhere to escape, so it stays with you, hot and heavy, pressing down like another layer of armor. You march forward anyway. Because this is what knights do. You endure the weight, the heat, the suffocation. You fight under it, bleed under it, and sometimes die under it. The poets will never mention how much it hurt simply to move. The bards will never sing about the bruises that armor gave you. They will only say you looked magnificent, and that the sun flashed brilliantly off your steel as you charged into glory. Only you will know the truth, that the gleam was not glory at all, but sweat, and that beneath the shining plates, every knight is simply a tired, aching human, crushed under the burden of their own protection. They told you that becoming a knight would make you noble. They said it with reverence, as though nobility were a gift of birth and honor, a bright crown placed upon your head. But you learn soon enough that nobility is not a blessing, it is an endless expense. To be called noble, you must spend more than you earn, serve more than you rest, and give more than you ever receive. Your first taste of this comes when you realize what it costs simply to appear the part. Armor, weapons, horses, these are not gifts. They are investments, and ruinously expensive ones. A full suit of armor costs more than most peasants will ever see in their lifetime. Each piece must be forged to your measurements, fitted and refitted, because even a finger's width of looseness can mean death in battle. Your sword must be balanced, the blade straight and sharp, its edge polished so fine that it could cut air itself. You might think a single sword is enough, but swords dull, crack, or are lost on the battlefield. You need spares. You need daggers, lances, a war axe perhaps. Each one adds another burden to your purse. And then there is the horse, your most expensive companion. A true warhorse is not the sort found in a farmer's field. It must be bred from strength, trained for courage, and fed with care. It eats more than a man, drinks like a dozen, and demands attention day and night. The stable alone must be maintained, the tack mended, the shoes replaced. When your horse falls ill, the cost of medicine and care drains your coin faster than any thief could. If it dies, the loss is more than emotional, it is financial devastation. Your lord does not pay for all of this. Knights, despite what songs suggest, are not pampered soldiers. You are expected to arm yourself, to equip yourself, to appear before your master ready for war. If you cannot, your honor is questioned. Nobility demands a certain image: the shining armor, the proud horse, the embroidered surcoat displaying your colors. All of this costs more than your annual allowance. So you borrow. You owe money to merchants, to armorers, to horse breeders. Debt becomes another kind of chain. You fight not only for your lord, but for the hope that one more campaign might bring spoils enough to pay your creditors. But war, as you discover, rarely rewards the obedient. You march, you bleed, you serve, and the spoils go to those above you. If you are lucky, you might keep a small share, enough to buy food, repair your gear, and stay barely afloat until the next campaign. Nobility also means responsibility, a cruel word disguised as virtue. If your lord grants you a small parcel of land, you must manage it. That means taxes, peasants, disputes, harvests, and obligations to the crown. You must attend court when summoned, bring gifts when required, and maintain your household according to your station. Every feast, every celebration, every guest who passes through your hall drains your stores. To feed another noble is a mark of pride, but each visit leaves you poorer. You host the lavish dinners because you must, not because you can afford them. Even your clothes are a form of debt. You cannot appear before your lord in common wool. You must wear fine fabrics: velvet, silk, or fur-lined cloaks, each one dyed in costly colors that proclaim your status. The tailor knows your weakness, the desire to appear worthy, and charges you accordingly. And so you spend more coin to look noble than most people spend to live. But the greatest cost of nobility is not counted in gold. It is measured in sacrifice. The higher your station, the less freedom you possess. You cannot refuse a summons, no matter how tired or wounded you are. You cannot speak your mind at court, for fear of offending a more powerful noble. You cannot choose whom to marry, for your union must serve politics, not affection. You cannot rest when others need you, because a knight's life belongs to service. There are moments when you envy the peasants you once pitied. They labor, yes, and their lives are harsh, but their hardships are honest. They rise and sleep according to the sun, not the will of a lord. They owe taxes, but not loyalty that consumes the soul. You, in contrast, are trapped by the illusion of privilege. You dine from silver plates but eat in silence. You ride a magnificent horse but cannot choose where it takes you. You wear armor that shines like gold but feels like iron shackles. When the war banners are raised, you must go, even if your lands are failing. If your crops wither, your peasants suffer, your debts mount, still, you march. If your wife falls ill, if your child is born, you may not be there. Nobility demands presence elsewhere. The crown calls, and you obey, because honor requires it. The world expects you to be proud of your burden, to wear it with grace, to smile while sinking beneath its weight. And when you return home, exhausted and half-broken, there is no peace. There are petitions to hear, accounts to settle, quarrels to resolve. Your steward brings ledgers that make your head ache, numbers that never balance, expenses that never end. The land that was supposed to sustain you instead devours you slowly. You sell a little of your inheritance to pay a debt, and then a little more, until there is almost nothing left. Still, you cannot let the facade crumble. Nobility is performance. You must appear untroubled, generous, in control. You host another feast, give alms to the poor, commission a new banner, anything to maintain the illusion. The people see a noble knight who lives in splendor, but behind closed doors, you count coins by candlelight, wondering how long before the mask slips. This is the true cost of nobility: a life spent pretending you are richer, stronger, freer than you really are. The songs will tell of your valor, your lineage, your shining armor. But no song will ever mention the debts, the hunger, the sleepless nights spent praying that one more war, one more season, one more act of service might save you from ruin. And so you carry on, noble in name, bound by gold and expectation, forever paying for the privilege of being admired. You dreamed of battle as a child. You imagined it as a grand spectacle: banners fluttering in the wind, trumpets blaring, brave men charging under the morning sun. You pictured yourself at the center of it all, a gleaming figure of courage, your sword raised high as enemies fell before you. The bards and storytellers filled your mind with glory, and for years, you believed them. But the first time you stand on a real battlefield, you understand how little those songs have to do with truth. The world before battle is not heroic. It is tense, confused, and heavy with fear. The air smells of mud, sweat, and iron. The ground beneath your boots is already churned by the marching of thousands of men, slick with the morning dew that will soon turn to blood. You look around, and the faces beside you are pale, drawn tight with nerves. Some whisper prayers, others stare into the distance, lost in thought. You realize then that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the act of moving while terrified. Your armor, once polished to perfection, now feels suffocating. The visor limits your sight, the plates bite into your shoulders. You hear the neigh of horses, the clatter of weapons, the low hum of voices murmuring last words to unseen saints. A trumpet sounds, distant at first, then closer. Orders echo down the line. Shields raise. Spears lower. The formation shifts like a living creature, slow and uncertain. You cannot see the whole army, only fragments, the flicker of flags, the shimmer of steel. You hear the enemy's drums before you ever see them. When battle begins, it does not happen all at once. It starts with noise, a roar that builds and builds until it swallows every other sound. Then comes the impact. The two armies collide, and the earth seems to tremble. You are pushed forward by those behind you, forced into a crush of bodies. There is no elegance, no strategy, just chaos. The first swing of your sword feels clumsy, desperate. You strike, block, strike again, barely seeing who or what is before you. You hear the clang of steel, the grunt of pain, the scream that follows. Blood sprays against your visor, warm and sudden. You do not even know whose it is. Battle smells foul of blood, of dirt, of fear. Men die loudly and terribly. Horses scream, wounded and panicked, rearing and crushing anything beneath them. You try to breathe, but the air is thick with smoke and dust. Your throat burns, your heart pounds, and every muscle screams for rest. But there is no rest. There is only the next blow, the next enemy, the next desperate heartbeat. Time loses meaning here. You cannot tell if minutes or hours have passed. All that exists is movement and noise, the endless crash of weapons and the thud of bodies hitting the ground. Sometimes you strike without knowing whether your blade found flesh or air. Sometimes you stumble over corpses, their faces twisted in shapes you cannot bear to look at. Sometimes, in the chaos, you step on a fallen comrade and cannot even stop to apologize. You had imagined battle as a test of skill, but it is not. It is a storm, mindless, unforgiving, and blind. Training helps you survive, yes, but not always. Luck is a cruel god here, deciding who lives and who dies with no reason at all. The best swordsman might fall to an arrow he never saw. The coward who hides might live another day. There is no justice, no poetry, no meaning. Only survival. And even survival has its cost. When the battle finally ends, if it ends, the silence is worse than the noise. You look around and see what is left. The ground is no longer green but black and red, soaked through with blood. The air stinks of death. Crows have already begun to gather, their wings dark against the fading light. You remove your helmet, gasping for air, and realize that the ringing in your ears is not fading. It will stay with you for days. You stumble among the fallen, searching for faces you know. Some you find still breathing, others already gone. You kneel beside a dying comrade and watch as his eyes go glassy. You want to say something, a prayer, a comfort, but no words come. The field is too full of death for words to mean anything. Later, the looting begins. Men who were brave soldiers hours ago now search the bodies for gold, for food, for anything of worth. Some take rings from dead fingers. Others strip armor from the fallen. You want to look away, but you can't. You tell yourself it is necessity, not greed. But deep down, you know that desperation erodes honor faster than any enemy's blade. When you finally return to camp, you are shaking. Your hands, your legs, your very soul tremble. You sit by the fire, too tired to eat, too numb to think. The night sky looks different after a battle, quieter, emptier, as though the stars themselves have turned away. You stare into the flames, and all you can see is the field again, the chaos, the screams, the faces. And the next morning, the lords will call it victory. They will praise the courage of their knights, the glory of the fight. They will count the land gained, the banners taken, the prisoners captured. They will feast and toast your name. But they will not stand where you stood. They will not hear the cries that haunt your dreams. They will not smell the blood that still clings to your armor. You will bow as duty demands and accept their praise. You will smile when they call you brave. But in your heart, you will know that the word glory is hollow. There is no glory in slaughter. There is only endurance, the stubborn will to survive the storm and stand among the living when it ends. That is the truth no ballad ever tells. The battlefield is not a stage for heroes. It is a graveyard for illusions. You think the battle is the hardest part, the clash of swords, the roar of war cries, the thunder of hooves. But you learn soon enough that the true test of a knight's endurance often comes long before the fighting begins. The endless marches, the days that stretch like weeks, the nights that blur into each other, that is where your body and spirit are truly broken. The morning begins before dawn. The air is cold, the kind of cold that seeps through armor and cloth and skin until it reaches your bones. The camp stirs slowly, with muffled groans and the clank of metal. You rise stiff and sore, your limbs heavy from the last day's travel. Every joint protests, every muscle aches. The ground you slept on was uneven and hard, and your breath still shows white in the air. But there is no time for comfort. The horn sounds, distant and flat, calling you to move again. You pack your few belongings with stiff fingers, the same worn cloak, the same dull sword, the same half-empty watersin. You check your horse, brush the mud from its coat, and secure your saddle. The beast snorts in protest, as weary as you are. Around you, hundreds of others do the same, a silent army of tired men and animals moving through routine like clockwork. No one speaks much in the mornings. There is nothing to say that has been said before. When the column begins to move, it feels endless. A snake of humanity stretching across the countryside, creaking, stomping, wheezing forward. The sound of boots on dirt becomes a rhythm, steady, hypnotic, almost maddening. The road is not kind. It twists through forests, climbs over rocky hills, winds through valleys filled with mist. Sometimes the mud is so deep it clings to your boots like glue. Sometimes the path is nothing but jagged stone, sharp enough to bruise your feet through your soles. The weight of your armor grows heavier with every mile. The sword at your hip feels like an anchor, the shield on your back a slab of stone. Sweat trickles down your neck even in the cold. You shift your gear again and again, trying to find comfort, but there is none. The straps bite, the joints chafe, the metal rattles with each step. You start to envy the peasants who walk barefoot behind carts, their loads lighter even if their lives are not. Hours pass, and the line moves slowly, endlessly. Sometimes you glance ahead and see only a sea of helmets and backs. Sometimes you look behind and see the same and unbroken trail of misery. When the wind picks up, it carries the smell of men who have not bathed in days, sweat, leather, and fatigue mingling into one suffocating scent. You breathe it in until you no longer notice. The landscape offers little comfort. Villages are rare, and most are poor, just a few huts and frightened faces peering from behind doors as your army passes. Sometimes the soldiers take what they need: food, drink, firewood. You tell yourself it's survival, but deep down, you feel the guilt of it. You see the villagers' eyes, filled with a quiet hatred they dare not speak. You know that in another life, you might have been them. When you stop to rest, it is never for long. The ground is wet, the air damp, the fires weak. You chew on hard bread and dried meat, wash it down with lukewarm water, and lie back for a moment's peace, but peace never comes. The commanders bark orders, the scouts return with warnings, the horses shuffle restlessly. Before you can even close your eyes, it is time to move again. Sometimes, the weather turns against you. Rain soaks everything: your clothes, your bedroll, your soul. The roads turn to rivers of mud, your boots squelch with every step, and the sky hangs low and gray. You march anyway. Other times, the sun blazes mercilessly, turning your armor into an oven. The sweat stings your eyes, your throat feels like sand, and every breath tastes of dust. Still, you march. The monotony does strange things to the mind. You start counting your steps without meaning to. You recite prayers, half-remembered songs, or names of those you've lost. You start to wonder if the road ever ends, or if this is all your life will ever be, one long, trudging path from nowhere to nowhere. Sometimes you catch yourself staring at the horizon, convinced it's moving farther away. At night, when the march finally stops, the exhaustion is total. You drop where you stand, too tired even to remove your armor. The ground is your bed, your cloak, your blanket. You listen to the sounds around you, the crackle of a few weak fires, the coughs of sick men, the groans of horses. Someone hums a tune nearby, slow and sad. It fades before the verse is finished. Sleep comes, but never deeply. You dream of walking still, always walking. You wake to find your body stiff, your mouth dry, your feet blistered. You stretch, wince, and begin again. Each morning feels the same, cold, gray, endless. You start to lose track of days. Was that yesterday's rain, or last week's? You cannot remember. The march consumes everything: time, thought, hope. Sometimes you pass the remains of older campaigns, broken carts, rusted weapons, unmarked graves. You wonder about the men who fell there, and whether their marches ever ended. You whisper a prayer for them, though you know no one will whisper one for you. And then, one day, you hear it, the distant sound of drums. Orders spread down the line. The march will end soon, they say. The enemy is near. You should feel relief, but you don't. You have been walking for so long that even battle feels like rest. You grip your reins tighter, your horse snorts and stamps, sensing the tension. The air smells different now, sharper, charged with anticipation. The long road is almost over, but deep inside, you know what waits at the end. The battlefield, the chaos, the noise, the blood. You take a deep breath, the dust stinging your throat, and whisper to yourself the same quiet lie that every soldier learns: there are days when you eat like a lord and nights when you go to sleep hungry. As a knight, food is as unpredictable as battle: too much one day, nothing the next. The songs say knights dine at long tables filled with roasted boar and overflowing goblets of wine, but they never tell you how rare those days truly are, or how hollow the stomach feels in between. When the campaign is long, food is a constant concern. Rations run low quickly, and what remains turns hard and stale. The bread becomes a weapon if thrown, the cheese grows mold, the dried meat is tough as leather. Still, you chew it down because hunger allows no pride. You learn to take small bites and drink plenty of water, if there is any to spare. Sometimes there isn't. When you march for days, you start to think about food the way others think about love or faith. A warm stew, a crust of fresh bread, a bit of butter, these become dreams that visit you as you trudge through the mud. Around the campfires, men talk of meals they once had, their mother's soup, a feast from a wedding years ago, a single apple shared in peace. You listen and smile, but every word only makes your hunger sharper. Then, when victory comes or when a lord demands to celebrate one, there is a feast. A real one. The kind that blinds you with its sudden abundance. Long tables groan beneath the weight of roasted meats, pies, fruit, and ale. Candles flicker, and laughter fills the hall. For one night, you are reminded that life can be full. You eat like a starving man, because in truth, you are one. But the feast is not just for food. It's for performance. You sit beside your lord, armor polished, manners rehearsed, pretending that the stench of war still clinging to you isn't there. You drink to his victories, to his glory, to his name. You raise your cup even when your arm aches, even when you'd rather sleep. The music plays, the servants hurry, and for a few hours, you are part of the illusion that knighthood is noble, that war brings reward. The feast is loud, but the silence that follows it is heavier. The next morning, the hall is a mess of spilled wine and half-eaten meat, the fire smoldering low. You feel bloated, sluggish, your head pounding from drink. The body that fought and marched is now weighed down by excess. You wonder if the gluttony was worth it. Then, as quickly as it came, the abundance fades, and you are back to eating what you can find. There are also the fasting days not by choice, but by necessity or faith. The church demands them often. On certain days, you are forbidden to eat meat. On others, you must go without food until sundown. The priests say it purifies the soul, but hunger makes you irritable and tired. Still, you obey, because disobedience is a sin, and sin means punishment. You chew on dried peas and boiled cabbage, trying to pretend it fills you. Sometimes, when supplies run out completely, the fast turns real. You count the days by the ache in your stomach. Men grow short-tempered, horses grow weak. You watch the weaker ones collapse by the road, too tired to move. The cooks stretch what's left of the flour with sawdust or bark. You eat it anyway. It tastes of bitterness and dirt, but it keeps you standing. There are stories of sieges that last months, even years, where knights eat rats or leather straps to survive. You used to laugh at those tales. Now you understand them. Hunger changes a man's sense of shame. When your belly burns and your head spins, you would trade gold for a single onion. And yet, in those moments, you also learn a strange kind of gratitude. When food is scarce, every bite becomes sacred. A piece of bread shared with a friend tastes better than any royal banquet. A sip of clean water after days of thirst feels like a blessing straight from heaven. Hunger humbles you. It reminds you that beneath the armor, beneath the title, you are just flesh and need, like anyone else. You remember one night vividly, a cold, wet evening after a long march. The campfires were small, the rain steady. You and 2 other knights shared a single bowl of stew. It was thin, mostly water, with a few chunks of root vegetable and perhaps a bit of meat, though it was hard to tell. You passed it between you, each taking slow spoonfuls, careful not to take too much. When it was gone, no one spoke. You sat there in silence, warmed not by the food, but by the quiet company of those who understood your hunger without words. Later, when you're back in a lord's castle, you'll have plenty again: roast fowl, honeyed bread, cups of ale that never empty. But the taste of that thin stew will linger longer than any feast. Because it was real. It was shared. It came when you needed it most. And you'll see, too, how even in abundance, the hunger never truly leaves. It hides under the surface, waiting. You'll find yourself eating faster than you should, drinking deeper, as though every meal might be the last. Because you've lived through days when it nearly was. So you learn to live between feasts and fasts, never trusting either. The body remembers both extremes. The stomach that starved will never be full, and the heart that once prayed for bread will never forget what it means to be without. You take your meals now with quiet reverence. You eat what's given, say your thanks, and hope it lasts. Because tomorrow, the horn might sound again, and the road might call, and your hunger will return like an old companion, patient and cruel. The fire burns low, a dull orange glow against the dark. The wind whispers through cracks in the stone, and somewhere far off, an owl cries into the emptiness. It's your turn for the night watch again. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, but it barely helps. The cold seeps in through every layer, through leather and cloth and bone, until even your breath feels heavy with frost. You sit in silence, listening to the world around you. The castle sleeps behind you, men snoring softly, horses shifting in their stalls, the faint creak of timber. Out here, the night feels endless. The stars look close enough to touch, and the moon paints the world in silver and shadow. But beauty does little to comfort you when your teeth chatter and your fingers stiffen around your spear. The cold is its own kind of battle. You fight it quietly, hour after hour, without glory or reward. You stamp your feet to keep the blood moving, flex your hands, pace the length of the wall. The stones beneath your boots are slick with frost. You glance down at the courtyard, at the sleeping campfires, and envy the men who lie beside them. The wind grows sharper, carrying with it the smell of pine and smoke, and something else, the faint scent of iron from your own armor. You know it well now, the smell of cold steel, like blood and dust combined. You wonder if the wind ever tires of circling these same walls, of whistling through the same battlements year after year. Sometimes, the night tricks you. A sound in the dark, a branch cracking, a shape moving in the distance sends your hand to your sword. Your heart beats faster. You strain your eyes, but there's nothing there. Just shadows playing tricks again. You tell yourself it's nothing, but your pulse doesn't slow right away. The darkness makes fools of brave men. Your thoughts drift as the hours pass. You think about home, if you still have one. You picture the hearth fire, the sound of a dog sleeping by the door, the smell of warm bread. You remember faces, a mother's, a brother's, someone you once loved, but they all blur together now, soft and distant like dreams you can't quite recall. You wonder if they think of you too, or if the world has already moved on. A night's life leaves little time for warmth, and less for rest. Even here, behind stone walls, danger feels close. Bandits, rival lords, whispers of rebellion, there is always something waiting in the dark. So you keep your post, because duty demands it. You stay awake while others sleep, your breath rising in thin clouds that vanish as quickly as they appear. Sometimes, another guard joins you for a while. You exchange a few quiet words, mostly complaints, half-hearted jokes, talk of warmer lands and better days. Then he moves on, leaving you alone again with the cold in your thoughts. You start to count the stars just to stay awake. You lose count by the hundreds. As the night deepens, the cold begins to bite harder. Your feet are numb, your fingers ache, and your face burns from the wind. You think about taking off your gauntlets for just a moment to flex your hands, but you know better. Once you lose that thin barrier of warmth, you'll never get it back. The wind doesn't forgive mistakes. There's a kind of peace in it, though this lonely, frozen silence. No shouting, no commands, no clash of steel. Just the soft hum of the world turning, the slow drift of clouds across the moon. You find yourself breathing in rhythm with it. For a moment, you almost feel calm. Almost. Then a cry echoes in the distance, the bark of a dog, the creak of a gate, the faint sound of hooves. You tense again, scanning the darkness. Your hand tightens around your sword hilt. The sound fades. Was it real? You'll never know. The mind hears what it fears. Time moves differently on the watch. Minutes stretch like hours. You check the sky again, trying to measure how much longer until dawn. The stars shift slightly, the horizon still black. You sigh and shift your weight. The stones under you are cold as ice. You envy even the dead, who at least no longer feel the wind. At last, the first faint streaks of gray touch the horizon. The air grows softer, not warmer, but lighter somehow. Birds begin to stir in the trees, their calls faint but steady. You can feel the world waking again, slow and uncertain. You never thought you'd be so grateful to see the sun. When the relief comes, another night trudging up the steps, bleary-eyed and wrapped in furs, you can barely feel your legs. You nod to him, say nothing, and make your way down. Each step echoes like a drum. You pass through the gatehouse, through the narrow hall, and finally into the small room where the fire still burns low. The warmth hits you like a blow. You stand there for a moment, eyes closed, just breathing. Your fingers are stiff as wood when you unbuckle your armor. The metal clinks dully as it hits the floor. You sit by the fire, rubbing your hands together, watching the orange light chase the numbness from your skin. The others are still asleep, a row of bodies under rough blankets, faces pale and peaceful. You lie down beside them, the straw mattress scratching against your cheek. You close your eyes, but even now, you can still hear the wind. You can still feel the chill in your bones. The night doesn't leave easily. It stays inside you, a cold memory that never truly fades. As you drift towards sleep, one last thought crosses your mind, a quiet, weary truth. For every glorious dawn in a knight's tale, someone had to keep the watch through the coldest hours of night. Pain is a constant companion, quiet at first, then louder as the years go by. As a knight, you learn to ignore it, to press through it, to pretend it doesn't exist. But it's always there, beneath the surface. The ache in your shoulder from that old lance wound. The stiffness in your knee that never quite mended right. The scar along your ribs that still pulls tight when you breathe too deep. There are no true healers here, only men with steady hands and crude tools. The chirurgeons and camp physicians do what they can, but their remedies are as brutal as the wounds themselves. A knife heated in the fire to seal the flesh. A poultice of herbs and vinegar pressed against a gash. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Infection comes silently, and when it does, all a man can do is pray. You remember the first time you were wounded in battle. It wasn't even a deep cut, a slash across the forearm from a lucky swing. You thought little of it at first, wrapped it tight, kept fighting. But by the next morning, the skin was red and hot, the pain sharp and constant. The healer opened it with a small blade, drained it, muttered a prayer, and told you to rest. You didn't. You couldn't. A knight doesn't rest because of pain. So you wrapped it again and rode out, the bandage turning brown with blood by midday. You learned then that a wound never truly heals in this life. It just closes enough for you to keep moving. Beneath the scar, the weakness lingers, a quiet reminder of mortality. In the field, medicine is a grim affair. After battle, the wounded are laid out in rows, those who can still speak on one side, those who cannot on the other. The air is thick with groans and the metallic scent of blood. You can hear the saw before you see it. A blade scraping through bone. A man's scream cut short when he faints. Another whimpering as they hold him down. There is no anesthesia, no mercy, just survival. Sometimes, you're the one holding a man steady as his leg is taken off. You feel his fingers clawing at your arm, his eyes wide with terror, his breath shallow and fast. You tell him to be brave, to hold on, to think of home, but deep down, you know he won't. When it's over, the chirurgeon moves on to the next, leaving behind a silence heavier than any cry. The lucky ones limp away. The unlucky stay behind. You've seen friends die from wounds that looked harmless, a cut on the hand, a scratch on the cheek. Days later, fever takes them, their flesh turning black, their eyes glassy. No sword could slay them faster than infection does. You learn to wash your wounds when you can, but water is often scarce, and time rarer still. In the quieter months, when you're not marching or fighting, the old injuries remind you of themselves. The scars itch in the rain, the joints ache in the cold. You stretch them, rub them, curse them, but they never leave you. Some days, you wake and wonder if there's a single part of you that has been marked by blade or bruise. And not all wounds are visible. The mind suffers its own cuts. You see things in battle that never fade, the faces of the fallen, the eyes of men who begged for mercy, the sound of a friend calling your name and falling silent. At night, those memories wake you before dawn. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, your chest tight, your heart racing, as if you're back on the field again. The priests say it's the devil's whisper, a test of faith. They tell you to pray, to confess, to cleanse your soul. You do. You kneel, you murmur the words, you ask for forgiveness. But prayer cannot mend what pain has already claimed. You carry the weight anyway, because there is no choice. A knight who falters is a knight who dies. You learn small tricks to cope. A bit of wine to dull the ache. Wrapping your arm tighter so it feels stronger. Avoiding stairs when your knee locks up. You adapt, because you must. You fight through the pain until it becomes part of you, until you can't tell where the injury ends and the man begins. Sometimes, a new recruit will ask you about your scars. He'll point at the line across your jaw or the mark along your hand and ask how it happened. You'll smile faintly and tell him some story, a joke, a boast, something to make him laugh. But you'll never tell him the truth, that each scar is a reminder of how fragile you really are. The worst wounds, though, are the ones you can't name. The deep weariness that creeps in after years of fighting, the dull ache that no poultice or prayer can touch. It isn't pain exactly, it's emptiness. The body heals, more or less, but the spirit frays. The parts of you that once believed in honor, in purpose, begin to crumble. You keep going out of habit, out of duty, out of the faint hope that maybe, someday, it will mean something. There are nights when you sit by the fire, staring into the flames, and run your fingers over the old scars. Each one tells a story, yes, but none of them end well. Each one is proof that you survived, but also that something inside you did not. And when someone calls you brave, you almost laugh. Bravery isn't what keeps you standing. It's stubbornness. It's the refusal to stop even when everything hurts. It's knowing the wound will never heal and moving anyway. One day, you'll take another blow. Maybe from a sword, maybe from time itself. You'll feel the sharpness again, the warmth of blood, the dimming of light. You'll think, for a moment, that this one feels familiar like all the others before it. And then, perhaps, you'll finally rest. Not healed, but at peace. Because even a life of wounds must end somewhere. You were told that honor is everything. That it is what separates a knight from a killer, a man from a beast. From your first day as a squire, every lesson, every sermon, every word from your lord's lips carried that weight: live with honor, die with honor. You believed it once. You carried the word like a banner, bright and proud. But the older you get, the heavier it becomes. Honor, you learn, is not a shining sword. It is a chain, invisible, but unyielding. It binds you to vows made long ago, to promises you can't break even when they break you. It dictates where you must go, whom you must serve, whom you must kill. It demands obedience, even when your heart disagrees. You remember kneeling before your Lord the day you took your oath. His hand rested on your shoulder, his voice solemn and slow. You swore to protect the weak, to serve faithfully, to uphold the code. In that moment, it felt holy. You were proud, trembling with purpose. But oaths spoken in candlelight are easy. It's in the gray hours after battle, when your sword drips and your conscience stirs, that honor begins to ache. Because sometimes your Lord's orders don't feel just. Sometimes the enemy looks too much like you, tired, frightened, human. Sometimes the weak you swore to protect are the ones caught beneath your army's boots. You tell yourself it's war. You tell yourself it's duty. But the words taste bitter. Still you obey. You always obey. That's what honor demands. You ride out when called, even when your heart protests. You draw your sword even when you wish to sheath it. Because if you refuse, you lose more than your place. You lose your name, your oath, your worth. You've seen what happens to knights who defy orders. Stripped of rank, branded as cowards, cast out to wander with no banner, no coin, no home. Some say exile is worse than death. And so you follow, not because you believe, but because you cannot bear the shame of disobedience. Honor also dictates how you fight. No striking from behind. No killing a man once he yields. No taking what isn't freely given. Fine words in theory. But war doesn't follow rules. When blades flash and chaos reigns, mercy is a luxury. You've seen men cut down while begging for quarter. You've done it yourself once or maybe twice and told yourself it was necessity. The code doesn't account for desperation. The priests say honor is a light in dark times. Maybe it is. But it's a cold light, steady, unwavering, merciless. It doesn't warm you. It only shows you how far you've strayed. There are nights you lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in your mind. The things you did. The things you allowed. You whisper your vows again as if repetition might cleanse them. But the words don't bring peace. They just remind you of the distance between what you swore and what you've become. And yet, you cling to it. Because without honor, what's left? The armor, the sword, the scars, they mean nothing without that invisible thread tying them to purpose. You've seen men lose it, seen what happens when they stop believing in the code. They grow cruel, hollow, unmoored. They fight for coin, for pleasure, for blood. They laugh as they kill. You fear that laughter more than death itself. Sometimes, when you pass through villages, children point at you and whisper night. Their eyes shine with the same awe you once had. You want to tell them the truth that honor doesn't make you noble, it makes you tired. That the shining armor is heavy, the sword dull with rust, and the code that holds it all together is written in pain. But you smile instead. You nod, let them believe the story. Let them have their dream. The world needs its illusions. There are moments, though brief, fleeting, when you still feel it. When you stand between danger and the defenseless. When you hold the line so others can flee. When you see gratitude in a stranger's eyes and know, just for that heartbeat, that your vow still matters. Those moments are rare, but they keep you moving. They make the burden bearable. Honor isolates you too. It sets you apart, even among comrades. There are times when the men around you laugh, boast, steal, and cheat, and you sit silent, unable to join in. You tell yourself it's virtue, but sometimes it feels like loneliness. The path of the honorable is narrow, and most of the time, you walk it alone. And as you grow older, you realize that honor isn't as absolute as you were taught. It bends. It breaks. It changes shape with circumstance. What your Lord calls loyalty, another calls cruelty. What your priest calls faith, another calls blind obedience. You've been both praised and cursed for the same action. You've been called noble and damned in the same breath. The code remains, but you no longer see it as holy law. It's more like an old friend, one you argue with, one who disappoints you, but one you can't abandon. You carry it with you not because it's pure, but because it's yours. Sometimes, on long rides between campaigns, you speak softly to your horse, the only listener who won't judge. You tell it how tired you are of serving so many masters, of wearing a virtue that feels like armor on the inside as well as the out. The horse snorts, as if in agreement, and you smile faintly. For a moment, you almost believe the burden is lighter. But when the horn sounds again, when your Lord calls, you mount up without hesitation. You ride into battle, into frost, into fire, because that's what you swore. Because even when honor hurts, it's all that keeps you from falling apart. You will die one day, like all knights do. Your name may be forgotten, your deeds buried under newer tales. But somewhere, perhaps, someone will say you lived with honor. They'll carve it on your stone, simple and final. They won't know how much it costs you to keep that word unbroken. When the battles end and the banners are lowered, silence takes its place, slow, heavy, and strange. The world feels wider, quieter, as if the land itself exhales after holding its breath too long. You return to your Lord's hall, or to some quiet village that still remembers your name, and for a while, you remember what it feels like to live instead of endure. The days stretch longer without the sound of steel or the cries of men. You wake to birds instead of horns, to the smell of bread baking instead of smoke. The first few mornings feel unfamiliar. You half expect to be called to arms again. But the call never comes, and slowly, your hands stop reaching for your sword as soon as you rise. In these in-between times, you find small comforts. The feel of sunlight on your face. The rhythm of hooves on soft ground as you ride without purpose. The laughter of children chasing each other through fields, a sound you once forgot existed. You breathe, and the air doesn't taste of ash or iron. It tastes like earth, grass, and peace. There's work, of course there's always work. The castle needs repairs, the horses need tending, the roads cleared of fallen branches. Your armor must be oiled and mended, your sword sharpened. You perform these tasks slowly, methodically. They keep your hands busy, your mind steady. There's comfort in the rhythm of it, in fixing what war has broken. The other knights talk of tournaments, of courtly love, of royal feasts in distant lands. Some chase those pleasures eagerly, hungry for the noise and glory. But you prefer quiet corners, a stool by the fire, a cup of ale, and the low hum of voices that don't demand anything of you. You've learned that peace isn't found in grand halls, it hides in the ordinary. Sometimes, when the night is calm and the moonlight spills across the courtyard, you walk alone beneath the stars. The sky looks the same as it did when you were a boy, though you no longer believe the same things about it. You used to think the stars were saints watching over you. Now they feel more like memories, distant, silent, enduring. The villagers treat you with respect. To them, you are a symbol, the armored man who keeps monsters at bay. You nod to their greetings, accept their gifts of bread and wine, but deep down you know you're just a man who's tired. They see the armor, not the scars beneath. You let them believe the legend. It costs nothing to smile. There are days when you visit the fields and help with harvest. Your sword caluses don't make for gentle work, but the people laugh and guide your clumsy hands. You feel a strange warmth, there's something you don't find in courts or battlefields. It's the feeling of belonging to something simple, something human. When the work is done, they share food with you, thick stew, coarse bread, a jug passed around. You sit on the ground, back against a tree, and for a while, you forget that the world is cruel. In the mornings, mist rolls over the meadows like soft breath. You walk through it, hearing nothing but the crunch of grass underfoot and the distant sound of a bell. The silence isn't empty, it's kind. It holds you gently, lets you rest without demanding anything in return. You find yourself talking to your horse more often, or to no one at all. The words aren't important, it's enough to let them out. There's always the question of what comes next. War always returns, sooner or later. Another dispute between lords, another threat from across the border. You know it will come, it always does. But you've learned not to wait for it too eagerly. When it comes, you'll go. Until then, you'll let your armor gather dust. Sometimes, a messenger arrives with letters or rumors, a summons here, a skirmish there. You listen, but you don't rush. You've begun to understand that life isn't measured only in battles fought. There's something sacred in stillness, too. When you visit the chapel, the priest greets you warmly. He thanks you for your service, blesses your sword, and reminds you to pray for those you've lost. You kneel in the cool shadow of the altar and close your eyes. The flickering candlelight dances behind your lids, and you feel, for a brief moment, the quiet pulse of faith. You don't pray for victory anymore. You pray for peace, not just for the world, but for yourself. You sometimes dream of the faces of those you've known, squires who laughed too loudly, knights who rode beside you and never returned. In the dreams, they aren't fighting. They're sitting at long tables, smiling, passing bread and ale, as if nothing bad ever happened. You wake with tears you don't understand, but they don't sting. They just are. The seasons turn gently while you rest. Spring brings blossoms that seem brighter than you remember. Summer hums with bees and warmth. Autumn smells of smoke and ripe grain. Winter comes soft at first, then sharp, and you find comfort in the crackle of the hearth. Each season passes slower now, as if time itself is giving you a chance to catch your breath. There's a strange sweetness in these quiet years. You still train, still ride, still keep your blade-sharp habits too old to break. But the edge of urgency has dulled. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself to every man who watches. You've already bled enough for your honor. Now, you fight only when you must. Sometimes, you think about leaving it all, selling your armor, disappearing into some distant corner of the world. Maybe you'd live near the sea, or in a valley where no one knows your name. But you never do. Duty still tugs faintly at your heart, and you know you'd miss the sound of a trumpet in the distance, the weight of a sword at your side. You are what you were made to be, even in peace. So you stay. You live simply, quietly, gratefully. The world moves on, and you move with it, slower now, but lighter. And in the stillness of those peaceful nights, lying beneath a roof that doesn't tremble from war, you let your eyes close. The armor rests by the door, the fire hums softly, and for the first time in a long time, you sleep without dreaming of battle. You notice it slowly at first, a stiffness when you rise, a slowness when you move. The sword feels heavier, the armor tighter. The morning chill takes longer to leave your bones. Once, you could ride from dawn till dusk without pause. Now, you stop halfway to stretch your back, pretending to check your horse's reins. You tell yourself it's nothing, that you're just tired. But deep down, you know the truth. Time has finally caught you. You've lived through more battles than you can count. You've seen kings fall and empires shift, but your reflection tells the only story that matters. The lines on your face have deepened, carved by years of sun, wind, and grief. The gray in your beard spreads quietly, as if it's been waiting for its moment. Your hands, once steady as stone, tremble ever so slightly when you lace your gauntlets. You still train, of course. You swing the blade, ride the horse, keep your body moving. But your strikes no longer carry the same strength. They're measured now, careful, deliberate. You fight like a man who's learned how fragile even courage can be. There was a time when you laughed in the face of danger. Now you simply nod to it, as if greeting an old acquaintance. You start noticing the young ones more, the squires eager to prove themselves, their armor gleaming, their eyes bright with ambition. They remind you of yourself, long ago, when the world still seemed sharp and simple. You offer them advice when they ask, though most of them are too proud to listen. That's all right. You were the same. Time will teach them what words cannot. In the evenings, you sit by the fire and watch them spar in the courtyard. Their movements are quick and reckless, their laughter loud. You remember what that felt like, the thrill of it, the certainty that you'd live forever. Now you smile faintly and sip your wine, the warmth spreading through your chest like memory itself. Your companions are fewer these days. Some have died in battle, others of illness, a few simply faded away, their names turning to whispers. You keep their memory close. Sometimes, when the nights are long, you speak to them under your breath, small words, fragments of old jokes, bits of unfinished conversations. You imagine they hear you, somewhere beyond the stars. The younger knights still call you sir, their voices respectful, sometimes even reverent. They ask about your campaigns, your victories. You tell them stories, though never the full ones. You leave out the parts about the fear, the doubt, the years of pain. Let them keep their illusions a little longer. You envy them that the way they still see glory where you now see cost. Your armor doesn't fit quite like it used to. The leather straps strain, the metal pinches. Some days, you leave it on the rack and go about in simple clothes. You feel lighter that way, freer, almost human again. When the villagers see you without armor, they barely recognize you. To them, you've always been a knight, not a man. But you find comfort in their confusion. It means you've begun to shed the story they built around you. You think often about your past, though not with regret. More with curiosity, as if you're rereading a book you once loved but no longer understand. You wonder how you ever had the strength for it all, the marches, the hunger, the endless cold. You can still feel it sometimes, the mud, the noise, the exhaustion, but it feels distant now, like a life you borrowed from someone else. There's a strange peace in slowing down. You walk more, ride less. You take your meals slowly, savoring the warmth of bread, the sweetness of honey. You sit in the courtyard and let the sunlight touch your face, feeling it seep into the cracks of age. You've earned this quiet, though it still feels undeserved. The aches become familiar companions. Your knee complains with each step, your back stiffens after long rides. You learn to listen to your body instead of commanding it. Some days you laugh at yourself, the mighty night groaning like an old door. But the laughter feels good, honest, soft around the edges. You've stopped trying to keep pace with the young. They move fast, burn bright, and fade quickly. You've learned the value of slowness, of thought before action, of silence before speech. When you talk now, people listen. Not because your voice is louder, but because it carries the weight of all the years behind it. You think often of home, not the grand halls or the fields of battle, but the quiet places, the old oak near the stream, the stable where your first horse slept, the corner of the chapel where the candlelight always flickered just so. These memories are small, but they last longer than glory. And sometimes, when the wind shifts and the night is still, you dream of the boy you once were, the one who stood trembling as he received his sword for the first time. He looks up at you, eyes wide, full of hope. You want to tell him so many things, that bravery is not the absence of fear, that honor will cost him more than he knows, that peace, when it comes, will feel strange at first. But you don't. You just watch him, and when he smiles, you smile back. The world around you changes. The lords you serve grow old or die. New banners rise. New wars begin. You no longer rush to join them. The younger knights go without you now, their armor gleaming in the morning sun. You stand at the gate and watch them ride off, the sound of hooves fading into the horizon. You whisper a quiet blessing for courage, for wisdom, for mercy. Then you turn back toward the hall. The fire is low, the wine waiting. You sit in your chair and close your eyes. The ache in your bones hums softly, but it no longer feels like punishment. It feels like proof that you lived, that you fought, that you carried your duty as far as it would go. Age is not defeat. It's a kind of surrender, gentle, patient, inevitable. And as you drift to sleep, you find comfort in that. The battles may be behind you, but their echoes still keep you company, soft as lullabies. It begins like all the others, a summons carried by a tired messenger, a seal pressed into wax, a few carefully chosen words about duty and defense. You read it slowly, your hands steady though your heart stirs in quiet protest. You had hoped the wars were finished for you, that younger men would ride where you once rode. But peace, it seems, is never more than borrowed time. You sit for a long while after breaking the seal. The candle beside you flickers, its flame small but persistent. Outside, the courtyard lies still under a pale morning mist. You can almost pretend you didn't read the letter, that the world beyond your walls no longer needs you. But you know better. When you swore your oath, you bound yourself not just to one lord, but to the endless turning of history. Your armor has gathered dust. When you lift it from its stand, it feels heavier than you remember. The leather straps creak, the metal smells faintly of oil and age. You polish it slowly, tracing the dents and scratches like old friends. Each mark has a memory, the ridge left by a lance, the faint bend near the shoulder from a fall long ago. You run your fingers over them all, feeling the stories rise beneath your skin. The morning you leave, the air is cool and bright. The villagers gather to watch you mount your horse. They bow their heads, murmur blessings, place small tokens in your path, sprigs of rosemary, a coin, a child's wooden cross. You nod in silence. You've never been one for farewells. The road stretches before you, long and gray, lined with the ghosts of all the roads you've ridden before. Your horse moves slower now, but steady. The rhythm of its gait lulls you into memory. You pass through familiar lands, meadows where you once camped, forests where you once fought. The trees have grown taller, the rivers wider, but the wind still sounds the same. You realize you've spent more of your life on the road than anywhere else. It feels, strangely, like coming home. The army you join is not like the ones you remember. The faces are younger, the voices louder. The commanders speak of strategy and victory with the eagerness of those who have never lost too much. They greet you with respect, the old knight returned, the legend in their midst. You smile politely, but their words pass over you like mist. You know better than to believe in legends. The first night in camp, you sit apart from the others, staring into the fire. The armor glows faintly in the orange light, your sword lying beside you like an old companion. Around you, laughter rises, rough and bright. You remember that sound, the forced cheer of men who pretend they aren't afraid. You close your eyes and let it fade into the crackle of the fire. When battle finally comes, it comes without glory. It rarely does anymore. The air is thick with dust, the shouts of command lost in the chaos. You fight carefully, each movement measured, each strike deliberate. You're slower, yes, but wiser. You know when to wait, when to turn, when to let the enemy's strength exhaust itself. You move like a man dancing with memory, graceful, precise, already halfway beyond pain. You see fear in the eyes of the young around you. You call out to steady them, your voice firm, calm. Some hear you, some don't. The noise is overwhelming, the clash of metal, the cries of horses, the dull thud of bodies meeting earth. You've lived this scene 100 times, but this one feels different. Not worse, just final. At one point, a blow catches you on the side. The pain is sharp, blinding, but not unfamiliar. You've been struck harder before. You keep fighting, the world narrowing to breath and movement, light and shadow. When the horn finally sounds for retreat, you're still standing. The blood on your armor is not all your own. Later, you sit beneath a tree at the edge of the field. The sky is the color of ash and rose. You breathe slowly, feeling each inhalation like a small victory. Your wound burns, but the bleeding has slowed. A young soldier, barely more than a boy, kneels beside you, offering water. His hands shake as he holds the cup. You take it gently, drink, and smile at him. You tell him he fought well. He looks at you as if you've given him a gift. That night, the camp is quiet. The victory is uncertain, the loss is heavy. You sit by the fire, your armor open at the chest, your hands resting on your knees. Around you, men sleep, some dreaming, some not. You listen to the wind move through the grass, the faint hiss of embers. It sounds almost like the sea. You think about all the campaigns before this one, how each felt like the last, how each left you more tired but somehow still standing. You wonder how many times a man can cheat death before it simply loses interest. You feel no fear now, only a deep, spreading calm. If this is the end, it feels kind. At dawn, the trumpet sounds again. You rise slowly, joints stiff, body sore. The sun spills over the horizon, catching the mist in gold. You mount your horse, the saddle creaking, the leather cool beneath your hands. The field ahead glimmers with dew, the distant figures already forming ranks. You take a breath, deep and steady. And as you ride forward one more time, one last time, the weight of years feels almost light. The armor, the vows, the endless roads, they all blur together into something simple and pure. A life lived in service, however flawed. A story not of glory, but of endurance. The young knights look to you as they form their line. You nod once, nothing more. You don't need speeches anymore. The sun is warm on your face, the air clean in your lungs. The world, even in war, feels beautiful. You whisper a prayer you've carried for years, not for victory, not even for mercy, just for peace at last. And as the horns echo across the valley and your horse takes its first step forward, you realize you've already found it. When it ends, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like silence. A silence so wide and clean it almost hurts to breathe. The battle fades behind you, swallowed by fog and memory. The banners are tattered, the songs unsung. You're still alive, though you don't remember when that started to feel strange. The wound you took mended, more or less. It aches when you move, and you move slowly now. The others are already rebuilding, counting losses, writing names on lists. You help where you can, stacking shields, tending fires, offering a word or two to those who have none left. But your thoughts are far away, drifting like smoke toward home. No one tells you to leave. One morning, you simply do. You saddle your horse, pack what little you have, and ride without fanfare. The road greets you with the familiar sound of hooves on dirt, the wind tugging softly at your cloak. There's no army behind you, no banner above. Just the sky, gray and open, and the quiet rhythm of travel. The land changes slowly as you ride. The burned fields give way to green ones. Villages begin to appear again, first ruined, then rebuilt, then alive. Children wave as you pass, and you wave back, though they cannot see your smile beneath the helmet. To them, you're just another knight returning from a story they'll never hear. You stop at small inns along the way, sharing tables with strangers. They talk of the war as if it were distant thunder, something that happened to someone else. You nod and let them speak. You've learned not to correct anyone's version of history. Everyone needs their own tale to make sense of the world. When you finally reach your homeland, you almost don't recognize it. The hills are softer, the forests thinner. The great oak by the stream, the one you used to rest beneath as a squire, still stands, though its trunk is split by lightning. You dismount and touch its bark, rough beneath your hand. You whisper a greeting, as if to an old friend who's outlived too many seasons. Your home is smaller than you remember. The roof sags slightly, the stones dark with moss. But when you open the door, the air smells the same, with smoke, old leather, a hint of earth. You set your armor down in the corner. For a long moment, you just stand there, listening to the emptiness. It isn't lonely. It's peaceful. You light a fire slowly, carefully. Your hands shake a little, but the flame catches. The warmth spreads through the room like memory itself. You sit beside it, stretching your legs, feeling the familiar ache in your knees. The crackle of the fire sounds like distant applause, soft, approving, enough. The first night home, you don't sleep right away. You walk through each room, touching old things, the table scarred with knife marks, the cup you once drank from, the window that never closed quite straight. Each small imperfection feels like a story waiting to be remembered. You realize that you've been gone longer than you ever meant to be. In the morning, light filters through the cracks in the shutters. You wake slowly, your body unsure what to do with rest. For the first time in years, there's no horn, no voice calling your name. You sit up, stretch, and smile. The silence feels like a luxury you can finally afford. The days settle into a gentle rhythm. You fix what's broken, one thing at a time. A hinge on the door. A patch in the roof. The garden overgrown with weeds. You work slowly, patiently. There's no rush now. Each task ends when it ends. When you tire, you sit in the sunlight and let the warmth sink into your bones. The villagers visit sometimes. They bring bread, cheese, a bottle of wine. They ask for stories, and you tell them small ones, simple tales of travel, of rain, of roads that led nowhere. You leave out the blood and noise. They don't need to hear those parts. What you give them instead are the gentle details, a bird landing on your helm mid-battle, a campfire that burned blue, the time you saw snowfall in complete silence. Those are the stories that linger best. At night, you walk outside and look at the stars. They seem clearer here, unclouded by smoke. You breathe the cold air, and it fills you without burning. Somewhere, an owl calls, soft and distant. The sound makes you feel small again, but not in a fearful way. You realize you've lived most of your life trying to be large, strong, brave, remembered. But the quiet teaches you something new. Smallness can be peaceful. You start to notice things you used to overlook, the way the wind bends the grass, how the river hums when the sun hits it just right, the patterns frost makes on your window before dawn. You catch yourself smiling at nothing, humming under your breath. You've learned to live again, not as a knight, but as a man who has laid down his sword. Sometimes travelers pass by your home and recognize you. They bow deeply, calling you sir or master. You tell them there's no need. You share a meal with them, offer shelter, listen to their tales. Some of them are soldiers returning from other wars. You recognize the same weary spark in their eyes. You tell them what someone once told you, that peace is not a gift given, but something you must choose to keep. The seasons turn gently. Spring brings color, summer hums with life, autumn sighs, and winter hushes everything to stillness. Each season feels like a page turning in a book that's almost finished. You find comfort in its rhythm. You no longer dread the passing of time, you welcome it. One evening, as the sun sinks low, you take your armor from its place by the wall. You polish it one last time, not out of duty, but out of gratitude. You trace every dent and line, whispering thanks to the steel that carried you through so much. Then, quietly, you hang the sword above the hearth. The metal gleams faintly in the firelight, not sharp anymore, but beautiful in its stillness. When you sit down, the chair creaks softly beneath you. Outside, the wind moves through the trees, carrying the faint scent of rain. You close your eyes. The world feels light again, not because it's changed, but because you have. The night arrives quietly, like it always does. No thunder, no omen, no sign that this one will be different from any other. You've eaten your supper, a small bowl of broth and bread. The fire crackles low in the hearth, painting slow-moving shapes on the walls. The chair beside it is worn smooth by years of sitting, of watching, of waiting. You lean back and listen. The house breathes softly, the faint groan of old wood, the hush of wind at the shutters, the steady whisper of the fire. It feels alive in the gentlest way, like the heart of something that has learned patience. You breathe with it, slow and even, your chest rising and falling in quiet rhythm. Outside, the moon hangs low, pale and round. Its light spills across the floor in silver threads. You follow them with your eyes, tracing where they fall across your boots, your hands, the edge of your cloak. You can smell the cold in the air, the faint sweetness of distant snow. You rise once slowly and step outside. The air meets you like an old friend, brisk, clean, familiar. The night sky stretches vast and clear, crowded with stars. They seem closer tonight, almost within reach. You stand for a while, hands resting against the worn wood of the doorframe, and simply look. You remember the nights you used to sleep under skies like this, armor for a pillow, earth for a bed. The stars were your ceiling then, your only constants. You'd lie awake, listening to the sounds of the camp settling down, horses shifting, distant murmurs, the low hum of weary men pretending to dream of home. You would watch the stars until your eyes blurred, until you forgot which ones were real and which ones you'd imagined. Now, the silence feels softer. The sky no longer feels endless, it feels complete. You take a deep breath and close your eyes, letting the chill sink gently into your skin. There's no fear in it anymore. Just the simple truth of being here, alive, and ready to rest. When you go back inside, the fire has burned down to embers. You stir it once, just enough to wake a few small flames. The room glows faintly golden red. You pour a little water, drink slowly. The cup feels warm against your palms. You look at your armor, still resting by the wall. The sword above the hearth catches the faint light, its blade soft with age. You smile at it, and for a moment, it almost feels like it smiles back, a silent nod between companions who have shared everything there was to share. You move toward your bed. It's simple, sturdy, the sheets smelling faintly of lavender and smoke. You sit down on its edge, fingers tracing the rough weave of the blanket. For a long moment, you just sit there, listening again to the quiet. You think of the people who passed through your life, the faces now lost to time, the voices fading into distance. You remember laughter around campfires, rain on metal, the first time you saw dawn break after battle. You remember fear too, and grief, and the ache of endless travel. But even those memories have softened now, like stones smoothed by years of river water. Nothing hurts anymore. Everything just is. You realize that for all your battles, all your oaths and wanderings, the thing you were truly searching for was this stillness. A place where nothing chases you anymore. A place where the world no longer demands anything except your being. You lie back slowly, your head sinking into the pillow. The firelight dances on the ceiling, flickering like dreams. Your eyes grow heavy, but you don't fight it. You've fought enough for one life. Somewhere outside, a night bird calls. The sound drifts through the open window, low, haunting, familiar. You think of how many nights that sound has followed you. In strange forests, in ruined keeps, across wide, empty fields. It feels like the world's lullaby, the same one that has been sung for centuries to those ready to sleep. You breathe in deeply, once, twice. Each breath feels like a tide receding slower, softer, pulling everything with it. You let your thoughts drift the way ships drift when their anchors are lifted. You see the road again, the sun breaking through mist, the sound of hooves, the glint of a blade. Then the road fades into a field of green, a quiet village, the laughter of children somewhere far away. Your hands rest gently on your chest. The warmth of the fire touches your face. The air smells faintly of ash and rain. You whisper something, maybe a prayer, maybe a name. You're not sure. The words melt into the stillness before they can form. And then, as the last spark in the hearth flickers low, the house exhales one long, quiet sigh. The night folds around you like a cloak. The stars shimmer through the open window. The world outside remains the river, the fields, the roads unchanged, unmoved. But inside, everything has gone still. You do not feel yourself falling asleep. You feel yourself arriving. Arriving where the battles end. Where the silence hums like a heartbeat. Where all the weary things finally rest. And as your breathing slows to nothing more than a whisper, you realize the truth that was waiting for you all along. You were never meant to conquer the world. You were meant to make peace with it. The fire fades. The night deepens. And you, the knight who once rode through centuries, finally sleep.